Okay, first we'd like to welcome everybody back to our Lunch and Learn. And as we say, if it's Tuesday, it must be Emmett Lunch and Learn. So someone suggested that perhaps I should put a tray of sushi in front of me to make it look like an official Emmett Lunch and Learn. But I guess we'll just have to do without the sushi for now and imagine it in our virtual reality that we have sushi in front of us. So I welcome everybody, and just looking at the screen, I just want to particularly welcome a good friend of mine from Bolivia, David. Welcome. I see that you're listening over there, and thank you for tuning in, and everybody else who's tuning in, but especially from David, all the way from Bolivia. It's nice to have you aboard on our program. So this week, I would like to share with everyone a fascinating piece that is both in the Maharalmi Prague and in what we call the Ein Yaakov. And it's a question that from last week's Parsha in Pinchas, and it really deals like this. And the question is, and let's set it up in the following way. You know, we all do a lot of traveling today, back and forth, and different countries, and many of us go to Israel. And, you know, I remember in the old days, you used to have conversations with the person sitting next to you. You know, you would sit down and engage a person in conversation. You have a nice long flight, and you wouldn't speak the whole time, but you have a little bit of time there on the plane, and you might have a nice conversation, and maybe something very meaningful would come out of it. I've noticed things have changed today, right? Today we sit down on the plane, and the first thing people do is they put in their earphones, and that's it. And they're in front of that screen that has so many different variety and choices of opportunities and videos and shows and movies, old, new, anything you can imagine, foreign films, whatever you want. You can sit there and 11 hours is usually spent by people really just staring at the screen. So there are very few conversations that we have anymore in airplanes, which is too bad. But let's imagine for ourselves the following conversation. You're sitting there on the airplane and you're traveling to Eretz Yisrael, ready to, you know, for your experience. And sitting next to you is a young man or a woman in college, and you know, going to Birthright for the first time, ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. And the person maybe took some sort of religion course in college, and looks at you and notices that you've ordered the kosher food, and maybe sees a yarmulke, a girl dressed in a certain way, but tznius, and looks at you and says, you know, you look like an Orthodox Jew. Can I ask you a question? And you say, well, sure, yeah, I'm all set for this. What would you like to ask me? And I said, you know, I've been studying a little bit of Torah, and if you were to say in just one sentence what you feel is the most important sentence in the Torah, the most important maybe concept that would sum up the whole Torah, what would you say? And you think about that for a moment. And he answered, well, that's a very good question. And a few things would probably come to mind. So this question actually is a question which I'm not asking, but the Medrash asks it. And it's brought down, I'm reading from the Hakdamas HaKosef, which is in the Ein Yaakov. Ein Yaakov was Yaakov Chaviv, and he lived in Spain in the 1400s. And he wrote an amazing work called the Ein Yaakov, the Eye of Jacob, in which he took all the sort of stories, Aggadic sources throughout the Talmud and created in a few different volumes, and it's studied very intensely and something of major significance. But he has a beautiful Hakdama, a beautiful introduction. And in that he quotes a Medrash. And let me read you the Medrash. The Medrash says as follows. It says, Ben Zoma Omer. The great Rabbi Ben Zoma says, he says, Matzinu pasuk kol yoser. I found one verse that I think this verse is the most inclusive of all the verses in the Torah. What's that verse? He says, Shema Yisrael. The verse that Ben Zoma feels is the most important and most inclusive verse that maybe sums up the whole Torah is the verse Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And I think I would agree with Ben Zoma on that one. That's a good choice. Shema Yisrael. What does Shema Yisrael mean? It really is saying that there's complete and absolute oneness in the world. There's unity in this creation. And what does unity mean? Unity means that everything that we do matters. It's not that Hashem is up here and we're down here. No, the spiritual world and the physical world are umbilically connected, intrinsically interacting to such an extent that everything matters. It's all Hashem. We can't see it, we can't put our hands on it, but we have to know it and we have to understand it. And the degree to which we do understand that everything is Hashem's oneness, and we're part of that oneness, it's so indicative of our value and how meaningful life is, and what this world is all about. Nothing escapes the divine eye. It's so purposeful and meaningful, and that's why that is the Jewish mantra, as it were, Shema Yisrael, something which we know that we're commanded to say twice a day, morning and evening. And Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu Shem Echad. So Ben Zomer says, Matzinu b'pasuk kol yoser. What's the pasuk? What's the verse that I think includes the entire Torah? He says it's that verse, Shema Yisrael. And that might be good, something to suggest to the nice birthright student sitting next to you, the nice college student. Shema Yisrael. You could talk about unity, talk about oneness, talk about meaning in life. Beautiful. There's another opinion. Benanas Omer. Benanas says, Matzinu pasuk kol yoser. No, I have a verse that I feel is even more inclusive, that is even more descriptive, indicative of what the whole Torah is about. V'hu, what is that? V'ahavta l'recha chamocha. You should love your fellow man like you love yourself. Interesting. V'ahavta l'recha chamocha. Very important. To love another like you love yourself. And in fact, we know the famous story brought down in the Gemara in Shabbos, when Hillel is asked by a convert to convert him while Hillel is standing on one foot. In other words, to find that one verse in the Torah that you feel that you could just tell me, and that's going to be what enables you to sum it all up for me. So what does Hillel do? Hillel says something very similar to this. He says, whatever is hateful to you, don't do it to your friend. The Gemara says, but what about God? That includes man to man. What about man to God? So Rashi says there, well, God's also your friend, isn't he? So whatever is hateful to you, don't do it to your friend. That's what V'ahavta l'recha chamocha, summed up by Hillel, means think about what you don't like, and therefore be so careful not to do that to your chaver, to your friend. And maybe it's even deeper than that. V'ahavta l'recha chamocha. V'ahavta l'recha chamocha really means to love someone who is not you. And maybe that is the purpose of Torah. To learn to love. To be able to get out of one's own ego, and to be able to give to somebody who is not you. And of course, by doing so, we become godlike. If the purpose of this world is to develop a relationship with Hashem forever, so we understand that the closer we are to God, the more similar we are to God, the more we'll be able to fuse with Hashem forever. And we know the word God, it means good. The Derech Hashem tells us the essence of being good is to be a meitiv, someone who does good for another. That's the essence of Hashem. He's a constant state of doing good. So the more we're able to give to another being who's outside of ourselves, the more godlike we are. That's how we really refine the most divine muscle in ourselves, to be able to give. And that's what it means. Be able to love. But what does love mean? We know love, the aleph, the hey, the beit. Aleph numerically is 1. Beit numerically is 2. And hey, we know, means give. That's when the brothers came down to Egypt, and Yosef says to them, hey lechem zara. Give them seed, give them food. And the Targum says, hey means hav, means good. Good. It means, hey means hav, which means give. So what's love? Aleph, hey, beit. One gives to the other. Aleph, hey, beit. Echad noten l'sheni. One in the active state of giving to another. That's what love is. Love is the aspect of being in a state of giving to another. And the more we do that, of course, the more we love the other, because the other becomes part of ourselves. And the more we do so, the more godlike we become, the more divine we become, because we're resembling the Creator in his in his most supreme way, in his most pure way. We're giving. So I would certainly agree with the great Rabbi Ben Nanas, who says that I found a pasuk which I feel is even more descriptive, even better than Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael perhaps is about the absolute unity of God in the world, but V'ahavta l'reich chamocha tells us how to be God-like. And the more God-like we are, the more we can fuse with God, the more fusion we have, so to speak, the more we perhaps can see as oneness. So he feels that's even more inclusive. There's another opinion that says, and it's actually not brought down in the Hakdamas HaKosef, it's not brought down by the Ein Yaakov, but it's really in the same vein. And there's an opinion brought down that on this question of V'ahavta l'reich chamocha, there's a great debate between Rabbi Akiva, who feels V'ahavta l'reich chamocha, loving your fellow man like yourself. That's the Klal Gadol Shabbatorah. That's the greatest thing that you can do. But there's another great rabbi, and he says no. There's even a verse which he feels is even more descriptive, more inclusive of what the purpose of Torah is all about. And what does he say? He says, that's Ben Azai, who says as follows. He says, Odir, another verse, Ki Sefer Toldos Adam, the pasuk that says in the Torah, where Hashem says, I've created man, it says, B'tselem Elokus, in the image of God, I've created him. B'tselem Elokim, the verse that says, Zet Toldos Adam, and refers to the fact that man is created B'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. So Ben Azai says, he feels that verse is even more important than the verse of loving your friend. And a very beautiful reason why Ben Azai, the reason why he feels this verse of Sefer Toldos Adam, this is the Toldos, this is the generations of man, and the verse B'tselem Elokus, B'tselem Elokim, that he's created in B'tselem Elokim in God's image. He feels this is even more important. Why? Because if you're going to love your fellow man, the way you love has to be that you recognize the greatness of the other. And the greatness of the other is real, that he's created in the image of God. If he's created in the image of God, then the degree to which we have to go out of ourselves to do good for that person, and to serve that person, and to care for that person, to be kind to that person, we're dealing with a divine creature. And it applies to every human being on planet Earth, is created in the image of God. I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva also, of Hannah Leibovitz, Zatzal, the degree to which you can see the divinity in another person is really the degree to which you would see in yourself. Because sometimes we don't always know who we are, and we can't perceive ourselves, so to speak, on the inside. But when you look outside yourself, you look at another face, and you say, you're created in the image of God, one begins to understand oneself better as well. So therefore, Ben Azai, he disagrees with Rabbi Akiva. And he says, Rabbi Akiva, it's not V'ahavta l'reich chamocha, it's not loving your fellow man like yourself, which is the Klal Gadol Shabbatorah. It's the fact that we're created, Ben Azai says, in the Tselem Elokim, this brought down the Torah's Kohanim. We're created in Tselem Elokim, we're created in the divine image. That's the Klal Gadol Shabbatorah. That's the whole Torah rests on that principle. We are created in the image of God. It's the way we're going to love somebody. The degree that I see it in you is the degree to which I see it in myself. I love you more because I see how holy you are, and I love myself more because I realize how holy I am. And we've spoken about this in past classes, this idea that when we have to, realizing our greatness is really the ticket to success in the spiritual world, or in anything in life, to realize how great we can be. And that greatness is a function of knowing that I'm created, but B'tselem Elokim, I'm creating the divine image. If I'm creating the divine image, then my potential is limitless. I have the divine spark inside of me, and you have it, and I have it. I'm going to love you for who you are. You're a God. You have Hashem living inside of you. I love myself. Hashem lives inside of me, and I'm not going to settle for second best. I'm not going to settle by just being mediocre. I'm going to strive for that supreme, superb excellence in my life. So these are three ideas that are really brought down in the Hakdama to Ein Yaakov on this Medrash. The Medrash is asking it. The question is, what is the most inclusive verse in the entire Torah? What is the verse that sums it all up? So let's just review it for a moment. So Ben Zoma says, what is it? It is Shema Yisrael. And I suggest a good thing to say to that nice young college student on the plane, teach them about Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Teach it to them, oneness, unity. Everything matters in this world. Nothing is disconnected from the Borei, from the Creator. Or, you could teach them about Ben Nanas. Disagrees. He says, no. You have to love. You have to get out of yourself. You have to be a giver. You have to be godlike. That's the whole purpose of creation. To learn to love. What is love? Aleph noten l'sheni. One gives to the other. That's ahav. Aleph hebet. Giving. Loving. Or you could suggest the idea that Ben Azai says when he disagrees with Rabbi Akiva, and he says, no, it's not about v'hafta l'rechamocha. That's great. But what's even more important is recognizing the other is created b'tselem Elokim. That you're created in the image of God. Oh, if you're created in the image of God, wow. That really fires and superpowers my obligation to love you. And of course, it sheds light about who I am. And the more I know who I am, the more I'll understand what my potential is. These are absolutely three beautiful concepts to speak about to that nice young college student on the plane. Shema Yisrael, v'ahavta l'rechamocha, and you're created b'tselem Elokim, created in the image of God. Each one is so important. Each one is so beautiful. And I guess they really have it. I heard this concept brought down by a wonderful teacher in our, Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson speaks about this idea, and I heard him say that, these are really three revolutionary ideas. There's a revolution in the idea of theology, that there's complete oneness in the world. Everything is emanating from the one source, that Shema Yisrael. It's the idea of complete sociological benefit. Loving another like you love yourself. You could build a beautiful world if we would conduct ourselves that utopian concept. And it's also a beautiful idea in psychology. What psychology really is a search to understand self. And what can really ward off depression and ward off insecurity and really help us combat really all of the malaise which affects so much of our society is appreciation of the value of who we are. And the degree to which we can appreciate the value in who we are is the degree to which we can live such healthy and productive lives. So again, these are all revolutions. It's a revolution in theology. There's oneness. It's a revolution in societal behavior. You got to love the entire. You got to love. You got to get out of yourself and build a beautiful world. And it's a revolution in psychology. Recognize who you are. You're created in the divine image. These are unbelievable concepts. And again, I would suggest we have a wonderful opening and dialogue with anybody who's sitting next to us on the plane, and you could spend a good 11 hours engaged in this conversation. Probably 11 hours won't be enough. If you could force the person to take out the earplugs, of course. But if you can engage them in conversation, you have what to talk about. However, I want to read now to you the end of the Medrash. The end of this Medrash disagrees completely with all three of these opinions and says, no, there's a verse in the Torah which is even more inclusive, which sums it all up to even more so than any of these wonderful three concepts that we've spoken about. So let me read it to you. It says like this. Just start again. Ben Zoma Omer. Ben Zoma says, Martzinu Pasik Kola Yoser, Hu Shema Yisrael. Ben Zoma says the most important verse is that God's unity, Shema Yisrael. Ben Nanas Omer. Ben Nanas says, Martzinu Pasik Kola Yoser. No, I found a verse that's even more inclusive. What is that? V'ahavta l'recha chamocha. You have to love another like you love yourself. Get out of yourself and give. And to that we added the Torah's Kohanim, which Ben Azai disagrees with Rabbi Akiva and says, no, the essence is to see the Tzelem Elokim in another, the divine image in another. But then the end of the Medrash says like this, Ben Pazai Omer, the great Rabbi Ben Pazai, or Pazi, he says as follows, Matzino Pasuk Kol Yoser, I found a verse that I feel is even more inclusive than these three. What is that? Now, listen carefully, everybody. It's from last week's Parsha. It's from Pinchas. And it says, V'hu eskeves echod taseh beboker v'cheves echod bein arbayim. You should bring one sheep in the morning and one sheep in the evening. The verse in Pinchas, last week's Parsha, tells us that in the listing of korbanos that we had when we had a Beis HaMikdash, we know that we had to bring what's called a korban tamidi, a daily sacrifice. And the obligation of daily sacrifice was to bring one sheep in the morning, keves echad beboker, keves echad bein arbayim, and one sheep towards the late afternoon. And in fact, that has been transposed into Shachris and Mincha. It comes from the idea that we are obligated to bring an offering every day in the morning and the evening. Keves echad, one sheep. And even on Shabbos with all our restrictions, all the work restrictions, the obligation to bring this korban tamidi, the one sheep offering in the morning and one sheep offering in the evening, even applies to Shabbos, and we do all the different malachot. It pushes off the prohibitions of Shabbos. But Ben Pazai says that is the most important verse in the entire Torah. So I'm a little bit stunned by this. I'm a little shocked when I read this. I saw this unbelievable statement from our sages, our great sages, who understood the mysteries of the world. The first three concepts I think are so beautiful. And we have such a beautiful discussion point for that young college student on the plane. Right? Talk to God's unity, loving another. You're creating the divine image. Talk to them about what it means, meaning in life, what it means to build a beautiful society, what it means to find who you are and therefore to live up to the potential that is God-like in you. Wow. What a great conversation. But Ben Pazai says, no, that's not the conversation you should be having. The conversation you should be having is to look at that student and say, you know what the most important verse in the Torah is? The most important verse in the Torah is that every morning you have to bring a sheep. And every afternoon, before evening, you have to bring another sheep. Oh my gosh, what am I going to tell this college student? Wow. I mean, first you have to explain the sacrificial system. Once you get through that, okay, maybe you can talk about what a carbon is. Karev, to come close, it's a different system. It's not what you think it is. But once you've worked through that problem, or you've explained how that's so beautiful and how it works, why would that inspire somebody to bring a sheep every morning and to bring a sheep every evening? And surely that pales in comparison to the inspiration that one can gain by speaking about the other three, Shema Yisrael, V'ahavta V'chamocha, and Tzelem Elokim. How could you compare it? What's happening? Why does Ben Pazai feel that is the most important verse in the entire Torah? That includes everything else. And not only that, the end of the Medrash ends like this. It says, Amad Rav Ploni. There was a certain rabbi there who apparently was at this discussion. We don't know his name. He's just called Rav Ploni, which means sort of, Ploni means like every man. Amad Rav Ploni. A certain rabbi stood up, a very demonstrative act, to stand up. And what did he do? Amad Rav Ploni al Raglav. He stood up on his feet. I know he stood on his feet. It must have just been a Raglav. He stood up to make sure this point is very clear. This point is Raglav, like the regel. Regel means foundation. This is foundational. The Amar, and he declared, Halacha ben Pazai. The halacha is like Ben Pazai. The halacha is, meaning the final word here is that the most important verse in the Torah is that you have to bring one sheep in the morning and one sheep in the afternoon. The Chesiv, and he brings a proof text for it. Why? because it says in the Torah, "K'kol asher ani maroscha es tamis mishkan chen ta'asu." Just like God said when He gave the instructions to Moshe Rabbeinu to build the tabernacle, He said, "All that I have now shown you, do it." Chen ta'asu, do it. That's His proof text. So let's see if we can understand this a little bit. Number one, why is this, according to Ben Pazai, the most important verse in the Torah? Number two, this rabbi who was present declared, this in fact is the halacha, it trumps the other three. And number three, why does he bring this proof text to say the proof is from the Mishkan, when God says to Moshe, Kol shenimara oscha, everything that I just shown you, kein tasu, now go out and do it. So to answer this question, I'd like to take us to the Maharal MiPrague. And the Maharal MiPrague, we know, was the great Rabbi Yehuda Loewy, who lived in Prague in between the years approximately 1525 to 1609, considered to be maybe the greatest thinker of the post-medieval ages, and his works really infuse so much of our thinking today. The Maharal MiPrague, and if you ever visit Prague, as many of us did last summer and the summers before, we always go to the grave, to the kever of the Maharal, and I'm always particularly moved when I'm there, because I'm such I'm just so intrigued and so have learned and grown so much by the work of the Maharal. So I'm going to read to you now from what's called the Siv Avas Reya, in one of his works called the Siv, the path of Avas Reya, the path of loving your friend. So the Maharal addresses this question, and he answers it up. And he answers the problem exactly that which we're dealing with right now. Why is it the most important verse in the Torah, this verse that says, bring one sheep every morning and every evening? How could that possibly be the most important verse in the Torah? Now, I'll tell you, if I wish everyone was in front of me right now, we weren't doing this on Zoom, I would ask you to tell me. We could talk about it, but it's going to be a little bit hard. So I think we're going to go straight to the answer of the Maharal. The Maharal says like this: Umasha Amar ben Pazai es keves echad hasa b'boker. That which Ben Pazai says, you should bring one sheep in the morning, one sheep towards the afternoon, late afternoon. Hu klal godol b'Torah yoser, and he says that is the klal godol, that is the most inclusive principle of the entire Torah, the most important principle, perhaps. The Maharal says, Ratzalomar, what does it mean to say? Masha odem oved Hashem yisbarach b'tamidus agamor b'hu avdo, says that which a person serves Hashem constantly, consistently. That's what makes a person into something which we call an Eved Hashem, a servant of Hashem. Kamosha Eved lo savo daso mina odon shelo rak ovdev tamidi. Just like a servant, an Eved, doesn't ever turn away from his obligation from his master, but he serves him constantly. But tamidus we call it. Ulekach amar esakeves echad hasa b'boker. And therefore Hashem says, I want you to bring a sacrifice every morning and every afternoon. And really the emphasis is on the word every, always. This is a type of service to God which says we don't stop, we do it day in and day out, including Shabbos. Shezem al korban tamidi. This is talking about the korban tamid, the daily, the continuous korban, the continuous offering. Shachar va'arif, davar sechlal b'Torah. Doing something consistently, continuously, without stop. That is the greatest principle for spiritual growth. Because the whole purpose which is intended in this verse is that a person, that a human being, an Adam, should be an Eved l'Hashem Yisbarach, should be a servant to Hashem. Kol shar Torah pirusha. And the rest of the Torah is just a way to bring it out. It's just an explanation. And through the mitzvahs, he learns how to serve God completely. Morales teaching us, I think, something just amazing. The most important verse in the Torah is the verse that says, you have to do something continuously, constantly, every day. And two reasons. Reason number one is that what makes a person an eved. God, I'm never on vacation from you. I'm always aware of you. I'm always alert to you and what you want from me. It's continuous. It's constant. And that's what it means to be an Eved Hashem. And that's our job in this world, is to say, God, I want what you want. And the way we demonstrate that is by saying, God, I never take off from that. I'm never on vacation from that. I'm always there to say, what do you want from me? And I demonstrate that by doing it every single day, morning and afternoon. Morning, so to speak, when we're awakened and we're beginning our day, and toward the end of the day when we've had success. And we turn to God now and realize it's all you also, and I have to thank you. Or maybe we have difficulties and we have to turn to God and say, I need you more. But this aspect of doing something continuously and constantly is what really creates us to be that Eved Hashem, to be that servant of God. And to the degree to which we're a servant of God, and saying, God, it's not about me, it's not about my desires, my wants in this world. It's about you. I'm here for you. If I know I'm here for you, of course I'm going to love my friend. If I know I'm here for you, of course I'm going to actualize my potential. If I know I'm here for you, of course I'm going to look to see the unity of this world, to see how you're speaking to me in everything, that there's oneness. Because I'm here for you. I'm yours. I'm your Eved. And that's brought out by the fact that we do something day in and day out. The Korban Tamidi, the Kevesh Echad, the Boker in the afternoon. That's the Morales explaining to us. That's why Ben Pansai feels this is the most important concept in Torah, to do something that says, God, I am your Eved, I'm your servant. And I'm going to do it with consistency. And I think perhaps the second point is how valuable it is to do something consistently. The way we grow spiritually in this world is we keep exercising those spiritual muscles on a daily basis. We're consistent in what we do. We just keep doing it. And sometimes we know we don't always feel in the mood, but we do it anyway. By doing it, something is happening. I'm doing what I need to do. God, I'm aware of you. My head might be fully there, but I'm going to try. I'm flexing those muscles. I'm gaining something. I'm putting you in focus. And I'm saying, I'm going to try. What do you want from me? I'm going to do a try now. Of course, there are times when we feel very exalted and we do it with even more kavanah and more intention and more feeling. But it's the consistency that allows us to truly grow. And I would just add to that and say, I think there's nothing we love more about ourselves than when we're consistent in everything in life. I think there's nothing more that discourages us when we have a beautiful idea and yet we don't live up to that idea. We're not consistent with it. We might talk about, let's say, not speaking lashon hara or forbidden words, and then we fail and we fall and we're not consistent. We don't live up to that beautiful ideal that we had. Or we make an admission to say, I want to get up early to daven with a minyan, whatever it might be, and then we just don't do it. Or we feel the same way, anything in life. We make a commitment to say, I want to exercise daily, and just not consistent with it. How we feel so negative about ourselves, yet when we do something consistently, we feel so good about ourselves. God seems to have wired us in a way in which we crave consistency, because consistency really is what enables us to grow, not just physically, but to grow spiritually. And therefore God wired us in a way that when we're consistent, like we just want to do that even more so. And the deeper concept that the Maharal is bringing out is the idea, of course, that it's that consistency in action which says to God, I am here for you. And the degree to which we understand that, God, I'm here to serve you, I'm your Eved, is the degree to which we devote ourselves to those three beautiful principles that the first part of the Medrash talked about, whether it be God's unity, loving another, or loving ourselves because we're created in the image of God. But it's when we realize, God, I'm yours, I want what you want. That's how we really transform ourselves and change ourselves. And the whole goal of the Torah, of course, is to transform ourselves to be that God-like person that Hashem knows we can be. You know, I just end with a beautiful story that they say the Chafetz Chaim, Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan, who died in 1933. So it says that once he was on a train with the Brisker Rav, and they were arriving at a town, and they noticed that there was a whole platform of people there waiting for the Chafetz Chaim to greet him, to look at him. The Chafetz Chaim was the spiritual giant of the generation, and it says that even when he would walk down his street in Radin, that even non-Jews would stop just to stare at him. They saw enormous spiritual greatness in who he was. And so they arrived at the train station and the platform, and there's a crowd waiting. And the Chafetz Chaim gets off the train, and he's about to say a few words, and there's a man yells out and says, "Quiet! The Chafetz Chaim is going to speak." And the whole place is still, is hushed. Chafetz Chaim had a very soft, low voice, and the whole place is just quiet, waiting to drink up every word that the Chafetz Chaim would say. But before the Chafetz Chaim spoke, he turned to the Brisker Rav, and he said to the Brisker Rav, "You know, I want to tell you something. When I was a young man, I had ideas and visions. I had a vision. I wanted to change the world. I felt that I could go and I could speak and I could give over Torah to so many people, and I could elevate their lives and just change them. So I went from place to place. Nobody came out to hear me. Nobody came out to listen. So I changed my approach. I went back to the Beit Medrash. I went back to my study hall. In fact, the Chafetz Chaim did. He went back and he sat in what they call the Ezras Nashim, which is the women's section, and he spent the next 60 years writing probably the most seminal work that we utilize today in study, whether it be the Mishnah Berurah, which deals with the laws of daily conduct, whether it be all the laws that Sfarim he wrote about of Lashon Hara, which is called the Chafetz Chaim based on those laws, or whether it be the works on Zvachim and Kodshim that he felt so dedicated to because he knew that the base of Mikdash needs to be rebuilt, and then we have to study the laws of sacrifice, the sacrificial system. The Chafetz Chaim is really that transmitter of that link to the previous generation. But the Chafetz Chaim turned to the Brisker Rav and he said, "When I was a young man, I thought I could change the world. I realized I was wrong. I realized something is even more important. Change yourself, and people will change with you. Work on yourself. Become that great human being. People will be so inspired by who you are that they too will change. And when people change, that's how you change the world. Don't try to change the world. Change yourself, and the world changes with you." And maybe that's what Ben Passe is saying. It's one thing to have these beautiful ideas of God's oneness, of love, of who we are, creating the divine image. But those ideas are really only of value if we say and we change ourselves by saying, "God, I want to be what you want me to be. I want to be your servant. I want to do something daily to show it. I don't leave my position. I'm yours." That's how we change ourselves. And we change ourselves, of course, we can incorporate those beautiful visions and ideas into our lives. And that's why that rabbi who was at that meeting, he stood up and he said, the halacha is like Ben Passe. That's the way to do it. Consistency, being God's servant. And he quotes a verse and he says, just like God said, this is the tabernacle that I'm showing you what it has to look like, but that the verse ends, the Maharal says, V'chein ta'asu. And this is what you must do. It's not enough just to know and see and have an idea. You have to do something about it. And when you do something about it, that's how you bring that idea out to action. In terms of the self-perfection that the Torah wants from us. Of course he wants us to recognize God's unity. Of course he wants us to love and to love another. Of course he wants us to recognize how great we are, creating the image of God. But the way we bring that out to action is by doing. Chen ta'asu. What does it mean to do? Morning and evening, constantly, consistently doing activities we call mitzvot that allow us to live these beautiful ideas And of course, when we live it, we incorporate it into who we are. And that's how we indeed change ourselves and live up to being that person, of course, that God created us to be. I wish everybody a wonderful week. And of course, if anyone has any insight to what I'm saying and comments, I'm more than happy to see them. I'd love to hear them. You can feel free to put it to WhatsApp me, or to send me an email, and I'd be happy to respond to it as well. Wishing everybody a wonderful week and looking forward to continuing our discussion on next Tuesday.